politics, racism, and identity. Real chill, a mix of things really. I don't really know how to describe it. On the brief it says model and YouTube influencer, spelled influencer. Did you write this? I really want to break the stereotype. I hate this stereotype of all Asians are shy and only good at maths. I hate this. And so I really want to do my best to collab with as many young Asians and people from all over the world and just let people show themselves and express themselves, be who you are and be proud of who you are, wherever you're from. When you go to China, one thing I found is that there are many things, many worries that I had, concerns that I had, issues that I had back in the UK that just suddenly left me when I got there. You know, in London growing up, I was always worried about getting robbed on the streets or getting in trouble. I got kicked out of quite a few schools and it wasn't easy, you know, whereas in Beijing, for me anyway, life felt easy, felt safe. Substance abuse, lots of friends in the UK who have, you know, OD'd or just had big issues with drugs, and in China that's not such a big deal. So there are both good and bad things about both places, and this idea, this notion that somehow one is good and one is bad, and there are people on both sides that feel this way, that feel that their side is good and the other side is bad. It's so simple, it's ancient. But unfortunately, in my work, some issues obviously arise, and recently I got interviewed by a Chinese magazine, and they gave me some questions which I thought would be quite a good starting point for discussion today. The first one, as someone whose role is to share Chinese culture and build UK-China bridges, how does politics come into your work? The world is getting smaller and smaller, and China's growing and developing so fast. And so I really think it's important to address these issues. And I really hope that through my work I can help give other young Asians a platform to perform, to express themselves free from politics, free from the stereotype of propaganda. But this is how it seems to a lot of people. So sometimes I'm working with people in the UK, people that have come to the UK, overseas Chinese students, they're studying there, or I work with young BBCs, we call them, like British-born Asians, British-born Chinese, who've been in England their whole life. And when they do something, when they make something, when they go on stage or they create, they do something expressive, other people see them and very often, of course it's not everyone, but very often say, is that like some kind of government state-run propaganda show? And that really, really breaks my heart, because for these friends, for these brothers and sisters of mine, some of them have grown up in the UK, they've gone to school and they've basically been told, you can't be Chinese because it's not cool. Or they feel like they can't be Chinese because it's not cool. And then they become adults and they start making things and they go out and they work. And then they're told, well, you can't do this because it's propaganda. And I think one of the worst things is this us versus them mentality that so many people have. Obviously, there are great people in both the East and West, and there are great things about both the East and West. And so the most important thing is a dialogue, it's building bridges. And yet there are a lot of people out there spreading false messages. There are some people who kind of have lived in China, expats, they go back to the West, and they report on the kind of atrocities that they've seen, and they make it out to be something that it's not. They use this and exploit this and cause more tension. Have a seat, no worries. At the same time, there are many people that now use this phrase, "我爱你中国," I love you China, and they're from the West, they go out there and they sort of use this for clout, and they pretend to know lots about China, but they don't. And so there's lots and lots of false information. So I think the really, really important thing to do is to go out there and record your own experiences, spread your own message. And I think that the more that normal people, working people can work together, we can help to fight some of these things. As someone with a British mother and a Chinese father, do you identify as Chinese or British? I kind of just think I'm me. You know, I don't really think about it that much, but if I had to answer, I would say I identify as Chinese, and that's for a number of reasons. One is that I just feel Chinese, you know, and I always did. And it's really interesting because growing up as a mixed person in London, obviously I'm really aware that I sound so British, that my background, my sense of humor, everything I've been, you know, taught from a young age, everything that I've read is in English. But actually, maybe it's because I kind of had this longing for China, and it was very distant, and we couldn't afford to go there when I was a kid, so I always had it in my imagination. And so through that, I kind of built this, I guess, spiritual and emotional connection to the place. And at the same time, growing up being mixed, you know, the amazing thing is that actually you're not fully British, you're not fully American, because people know that you have a mixed background, they want to know about your other background, and it's a talking point for conversations, even just at parties or events or whatever. It's something about you, and obviously that becomes part of you. And so I think everybody should identify with, should be what they feel, what they truly feel. And the important thing is you have to really look deep within yourself and really think about, who am I? And what do I feel? And so for me, that's really, really important. And like I said earlier, man, it breaks my heart that some people feel like they have to say they're from the West because, you know, they're at school in the West or they're at college in the West. You should say what you feel and be who you are, and I've always just felt Chinese. And the other thing is that I hope it's making a good statement, you know? I know that, for example, some audiences, I'm not going to call them fans because they're not really fans, they don't really like me, but some audiences in China have said, stop saying you're Chinese because you're not, we're Chinese. And I totally get that point too. You know, they can be Chinese, the people that have grown up in mainland China. But I think that through social media and through my work, I've only got this small window. It might reach millions of people, but people's attention spans these days are very, very short. So I really want to say my message very quickly and very succinctly. And so I do say I'm Chinese because I think well, I hope anyway, that it makes a good statement. And that statement is basically you kind of choose who you are and you should be who you are. Have you ever experienced racism? And yes, I have. But weirdly, the thing about my kind of history is that the trajectory should go like this. It should be a kind of positive story about how I've become enlightened and I've grown to really, you know, have a peace and loving attitude. But weirdly, to be honest, it's kind of gone like this, and I've got more and more pissed off as the years have gone on. And I'm going to share with you 3 small stories now, 3 kind of experiences I've had of racism in the UK. The first was when I was a kid, right? My dad was busking in London. He was playing music on the streets of London, and he had this kind of small sign that basically, you know, told people what he was about. And there was some argument with a British musician about who was playing next, about their time slot. Anyway, the guy kicked over his sign and called him a fucking chink. And I just went ballistic, and I was so young, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I was kind of doing this stuff. And basically, you know, had a little scrap with him, and then went back to my dad thinking he'd be really proud, thinking I'd done the right thing. And my dad basically told me, no, that was the wrong thing, what are you doing? Because actually the best thing to do is to ignore it and be the bigger man. And I think it links back to a Chinese value called 谦逊, which essentially means be humble in the face of disrespect and save your face. And so that really influenced me, and I listened to him back then. And actually I remember when I was a child, all the way up until high school, I really felt relaxed about it. You know, I didn't feel like I'd suffered from any real racism. I didn't feel boxed in. It was more my classmates that I felt were really suffering from bullying and racism. I felt very confident, very relaxed, and I loved telling people I was Chinese. And then in school, I remember, and this is the second story, there was this kid who was just a kind of classic victim. English was his second language. He came from mainland China. His parents were first-generation immigrants, and it was really, really tough for him. He really couldn't speak good English. He was very nervous. He was kind of shake all the time, and he was just a real victim, and it was heartbreaking to see. And I was really, really fond of him, but to be quite honest, we weren't friends. I wasn't strong enough at the time to really make friends with him, get to know him. And there was this one period where we had this like coursework, this kind of long essay that we had to write over a period of several months, and it was maths. And this gang basically forced this kid to write all of their coursework. So this is like months and months of work. Even for one student, it would be months of work, and this kid had to do about 7 or 8 of these things. And he would go back home every night, and I remember when I heard about it, sort of imagining what it was like for him to really go back to his home every night and to see his parents and to be writing 7, 8 times the coursework of everyone else. And had all these strange thoughts, like I wonder what his parents think. I wonder if they think he's like really studious and really clever, or if they even know what's going on, if he's even told them. And that really broke my heart. And I remember then finding out about it, me and another friend of mine, he's also mixed British Chinese, went to confront them. And we kind of did this shit again and had a big fight, and it went disastrously for us, and we got beat up. But that really changed me. I do remember that really changed me, because after that I started really getting fed up with this stuff. And I started work, and I've just told you guys how, you know, I went to model in Beijing and then came back, and now I'm doing it in London. And I was on set once, story number 3, on set once, and this director, he was British, and he basically made a joke when the female model was late on set. He basically made a joke inferring that she was late because she was doing business, doing something that we won't speak of, with a white guy, because that's what Asian women do. And it was all really sexist and really racist, and it was a really cruel joke. But what pissed me off about it most was that a lot of the crew there, who were Chinese, were laughing at it. Now, I don't know how many of them really understood what he was saying, or how many of them just wanted to please him. I don't really know what was going on, but all I know was that it was really acceptable in that room at that moment. And that was another real breaking point for me. So now I just think it's got to the stage where we have to speak up more. When we see things, we have to record it. When we have feelings or experiences that we want to express and share, we have to let other people know. It's a really, really important time. And I think being humble, sorry, bear with me. Being humble is a very, very beautiful value. And I'm sure that in many situations it can really, really work. I'm sure it can do wonders in the right situation. But I think right now, when we're talking about the fight against racism, this ancient value, as beautiful as it is, doesn't really apply.